Now, this might come as a shock to some of you, but my Crf110F hasn't always been this wireless handlebar wheelie machine. A few moments ago, I pulled this front end off because the suspension is way too soft. So let's get into it and let me show you what's wrong. So first things first, my original CRF forks do currently have longer dampening rods as well as a 10-weight shock oil. So the only thing missing from them is a stronger spring, which is why I can practically move these as they sit. These on the track bottom out all the time. So stock as the bike comes, it runs a small spring like this with a really big spacer, and unfortunately that just can't handle my weight. It's obviously built for a little bit of a younger child, which makes sense because the bike's targeted for that. However, then I thought, well, let's go ahead and slap on a nice set of upside down forks. I was going to rebuild them. They came off a super motard, so there's no pitting or anything on the tubes. I thought, hey, these are perfect for my application, but unfortunately they were very far from perfect, and I'm going to show you exactly why now. So the main tube that goes on the neck bearing there, the Chinese version is a 22mm and the Japanese version is a 25mm. So there was our first issue. Then unfortunately the space between the two triple clamps is 152 on the Chinese forks, and it is much greater on the Japanese stuff, which is 171. So there was a height issue, a width issue. It wasn't as simple as just machining up some bushes or something like that. So this is getting put on the back burner. These I might potentially still fit, still rebuild, really make them nice, but for the moment being, these aren't going to work. Then I pulled my thumb star frame out of storage and I thought to myself, well, these are telescopic forks. They probably have a very similar size spring, but just geared for a slightly heavier rider. Let's go ahead and try that. Pull those springs out, and unfortunately this tube is actually just a little bit wider than the stock 110 one, so that wasn't an option. So that's out of the question as well. Which finally brings me to this longer spring that's on the table. So you can see it's considerably longer. This is exactly what I was looking for when I was originally looking for some springs locally. I finally managed to find in one of the bikes in the shed. So we're going to be fitting this spring to the forks, and I'm going to show you the exact difference that you're going to get between the stock one and a nice long spring. Woo! So another thing I thought I'd do while the forks are off is I went and got an O-ring set. I have now put an O-ring on the fork itself so that I can see how much travel it's getting, exactly like the mountain bikes do it, just so that while you're at the track you can see exactly how much of your fork you're using and adjust it accordingly. And now this is where it gets super interesting. So on the left we've got a fork that's got our longer spring in it, and on the right we've got the original. So longer dampening rod, heavier weight shock oil, but a standard spring. So currently I get about 6 centimeters of travel on the original, and I get 8.2 on the harder spring. Just the weight of the bike already compresses the original spring quite a bit, so I end up with very little travel on the track, really not much. It's not the full 60 millimeters that I have of travel that's sitting on the table here. And with the stronger spring now, my load that will be on the bike will probably just take, who knows, probably about a centimeter. We'll see when we fit it to the bike towards the end of the video. So just before I go and fit this longer spring into our second fork, what I want to do is show you guys a slow-mo side by side of the original spring versus the upgraded spring, so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about, and then we'll go ahead, fit this, and you better believe we're going to test it before the end of this video. It is quite nice how easy it is to get into these forks. Obviously they don't have a lot of adjustability on them, actually none. So it will be changing physical things like springs or dampening rods and stuff like that. But we're obviously going to keep the oil that's in there. I've only done 30, not even. I've done about 25 hours on the oil that's in these forks. So it's not that they need a full-on service just yet, but if these springs do work, and it looks like it's going to be a completely viable option, then what I'll do is I'll do a fork rebuild, and I'll probably paint the bottom of my fork as well. Now for the spring, I like to use a little bit of welding rod to pull it out. So just take a little bit of welding rod, put a little kink on it. You obviously don't want to use this welding rod after. It will seriously contaminate your welds. And then we're going to slowly pull it out, obviously leaving as much oil behind as we can. and then we'll remeasure oil height before we assemble anyway. Mustn't forget our washer, so we're gonna drop our spring in. This is a progressive spring. You'll see it's one size and then it gets tighter and tighter towards the top. We'll see how that works out for us. I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be beneficial or non-beneficial, so we'll just have to see. Okay, this part's a little tricky obviously with the mount that's still sticking out, but it didn't go in with too much of a fuss on the other fork, so sure we'll be good. So, oh, yay! Yo, I clipped my nail nicely. Ended up bumping the camera there, but she's going in. So before I go ahead and fit the triple clamps and everything back to the bike, I am going to make sure that at least one side has a nice O-ring on, and then we're going to fit the triple clamps, re-grease all the bearings, and then that's not the only thing. While everything was apart, I thought let's go ahead and put on a set of normal bars, so a 22mm bar instead of a fat bar. The reason being, next month we're doing a Halloween pitch and ride, and it's going to be a night event, so I want to have my LED bar on. So I thought while I'm here, let me put a set of normal bars on, a bar pad for now, and then next month I'm going to stick the lights on. It's going to be sick! There you have it, guys. The proof is in the pudding. The Crf110 is running spectacularly well now. The suspension's feeling really dialed. I'm really happy with it at my weight. I know there's going to be heavier guys running heavier springs in this, but this is really feeling dialed for our track style, my riding style, and my weight, which I'm pretty happy about. So if you want to see any other mods I've done to this bike, just click on the next video over here. Enjoy, guys.